So welcome to part 2 of our marketing series here, or an Idiot Marketers series. So basically what we're going to do here is dive a little bit more into our campaign management for Google AdWords. So if you watch the first video, basically what we did is we talked about the site, the company a little bit, and the challenge that we face. Right now we have a lack of traffic coming in, which is making it difficult to acquire new users, and what we're going to do about that. And the solution that we're going to try right now is paid advertising via Google AdWords. There's obviously a lot more solutions that we can try, and that's why this video series is being made, is to explore all of those. But you got to start somewhere, so here we are. So the quick update is that we've had one full day of advertising. It's not a lot to go on, but I figured I was going to wait a week to make this first video, but it's actually interesting to get right in after that first day, because I think, as a lot of Google AdWords folks will tell you, it's all about managing the hell out of this account, right? You can't just put in an autopilot and expect to get results. You really need to get in there and be hands-on. So that's what we're going to do. Now, there's a couple ways of looking at the data, but before we do, let's just talk about traffic in general in the website, because these are all interconnected. So what I mean by that is, the website yesterday got this for traffic. This is in Google Analytics, and we're just looking at the entire day's worth of traffic. So you can see here that we start at basically midnight and we go on through to the end of the day. There is one important piece of data which we're going to use to tweak AdWords here shortly, which is, if you can notice this little trend right here, it's not a huge number of users, but the majority of my users are clearly coming from basically business hours in the United States, so 6 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. And so we're going to use this as an input to AdWords in just a second. But it is important to note, first, to look at that if you're doing this, just to kind of take stock of some important metrics. So first off, what's your bounce rate? Are a lot of people getting onto your site and leaving right away? If they are, that's not a good sign. My bounce rate isn't great, but I think it's pretty decent. 34% means that the vast majority of users that come onto my website look at least more than one page. And they also stay for a couple minutes too. So 2 minutes and 27 seconds, I think, for a product page like this is good. It probably could be better, but the stickiness of the site seems pretty good. Now, if you're a Google Analytics user, one thing that I like to do next is to look at the content of the site. So we know how many people came on the site, we know how long they stayed for, but what did they actually look at and where did they come from? And my favorite way of doing that is by going into site content and going to this content drill down tab right here. So this shows me where on my site people went. So you can see, and this is great for me, one of the most popular pages is the store. So people would come onto the site and they would look at the store page. They also looked at samples, they looked at my free version, some of the feature pages that we have, and so on. And so again, if you're doing this for yourself, where do you want people to go? Well, for me right now, this is exactly where I want people to go. I built my site such that the homepage is actually quite informative. I try to be really upfront with what the site is. So it's a professional web form software package. I try to talk a little bit about why you might want us and some additional reasons why. And then I say, at the end of that, get started today. And this just takes you to the store page. And I like this flow because this takes you to a page where you get a lot of calls to action. Buying is a call to action. Asking for a personalized demo is a call to action. If you're an educational user, you can see if you qualify for discounts, etc. So there's a lot of calls to action here, but as we're going to talk about in future videos, is this the best? Do I want people going to my store page immediately, or do I want them going to a feature page first? So this is something that we're going to have to start A/B testing to see what's going on there. Now, before we leave this, one other thing that I like to do, which is, I know that 7 people came to the store page, but I also know that as a consumer of things, I've actually done this before, maybe you have too, a lot of times I will buy something and then I will actually go back to the web page where I just bought something and I'll check out a feature, right? Like maybe this TV has a cool picture and feature function. And I remember reading something about that on the purchase page on like Amazon or maybe the manufacturer site. but I forgot how to do that. So I'm just like, oh, did they say how to do it? So I'll actually go back to that store page again. So maybe is what I'm saying here is these are already existing users. Like, how do they get to the store page? Well, the easiest way that I find to do that is to go to this little secondary dimension button right here, click this, and under acquisition, go to medium. And then this will actually show me what they use to get to that page. And so now we can actually see that 4 of those visits actually came from an organic method. So in other words, it came from search. And by the way, there's actually other ways that we can do this. So I think source will actually show me if it was a direct or if it came from Google, right? So like, did they search to get my page, etc. So I find it really, really helpful, and I think you will as well. Now, the one takeaway from this, at least my takeaway, is this right here. This line right here means that somebody went to the store page after they went to my site directly. In other words, they didn't search for my site. They just typed in rackforms.com and they ended up on the store page. And you can see here that when they did that, they stayed on the page on average for about 2 minutes and 49 seconds. However, if they use Google, in other words, they did a keyword search and landed on the page, I had the same number of visits, but the average time on page was less than half. This is something where I'd ask you guys, do you know what this means? Why does it show that type of discrepancy? Does this mean that this is a more serious user and that the first time users are just kind of more glancing on the page? Or what? And so I think that's interesting. If you have any feedback about that, please let me know. I'd love to know more about that. The other thing that would be nice about this, of course, is just some more general information. Like, did they use, like, what keywords did they use to get to this? So they're a Google user. Did they search for something like, as we talked about in the first video, something that I don't do? I actually rank for a couple keywords where, in one case, it's like open source software, which is a little bit being like a watch shop and somebody asking for digital watches, but I only sell analog watches. Like, it's just not something I do. So maybe some of these users just left the site right away. I don't know, but that's something that it would be interesting to know. So if you have any ways of figuring that out, please let me know. Okay, so that's kind of the high-level overview of the traffic on the site. What's key about all of this, though, is that this is all traffic that has nothing to do with our advertising plan. And that's because if we look at our campaign management right here, play the sad trumpet sounds, we had 43 impressions of our ads, but no clicks. So let's dive in for a couple minutes here and talk about our advertising campaign. Again, what we're doing here is starting slow and we're going to ramp up to what will hopefully be an effective advertising campaign. But a lot of this, as we're going to see shortly, is going to depend on our site doing well for us as well. And so we'll talk about that in just a second. But first off, let's look at our campaign. So we have our main starter campaign, very low budget and very few ad groups. So we just have 2 main ones. It is important to note at this point that it's important to know your audience. So in my particular case, I have 2 main classes of users. You, if you're doing this, think about your class of users. In my case, I have really technical users. That's what this ad is for. And because they're more technical, almost by their nature, that means there's fewer of them. So the numbers bear that out. There was far fewer impressions of the technical ad versus the much broader ad. Both of these are applicable to my users, but only one of them is something that is going to be shown to a wide number of people. That said, this guy exists, even though numbers are low, because these are much more likely to become Rackforms users. If we go into the ads then, something that's, and I mentioned in the first video, this is not my first go around with AdWords, but I'm not going to say I'm good at it because this is something where I don't know exactly what this means, but I just know that when I've done AdWords in the past, it seems like only a few of the ads that I create are actually shown, and that bears this out as well. So it turns out that either because the algorithm is trying to choose which one I want to show, or maybe these ads just simply work better for the keywords, the majority of the ads that were shown only came from 2 of the ads, and the other 2 actually didn't have any views at all. Again, I'm not going to dive too deep into this now, but we're going to keep this in mind moving forward. Do we need to create more ads, fewer, etc.? The real big takeaway from this first video, though, is the keywords tab. And the reason why is because my good old friend below first page bid is back. So this is something to really keep in mind if you're thinking about doing your AdWords yourself as well. Basically, when I perform a search for something like PHP Web Form Software, which is exactly what my software does, I am now showing as a ad on a Google search result page. And the information here actually bears that out. If I do a search for PHP Web Form Software, I'm one of the results that shows. I have an eligible ad for that page. The problem is that very few people click on these ads right here. This is kind of like spillover territory. So if you didn't pay enough to be one of these 3 ads, you essentially get put on here. And again, my experience personally is I've never clicked on an ad here. I mean, literally not once in my life have I ever clicked on an ad. And so my guess is that most other people don't as well. If they're going to click on an ad, it's going to be one of these guys. And so this then is the desired real estate that you want to be on. The problem is that in order to show up in that list on the top, you need to be paying a heck of a lot more than what my default bid is. So at this point, if we just look at this ad, I'm eligible to show ads, which I clearly am. And right now, my average position is 6.5. And so not only am I in an area where nobody clicks on, I'm also kind of down the list too. However, maybe you can make an argument that because 6th is around where the first organic results are, and most people click organic results, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Maybe shooting for 5 is a good thing here. Whatever. But the point is, this is still not great. Even if we come up with some magic mojo where I get some clicks because I'm on 5 or 6 here, most people are still not clicking these ads. And so what that means then is I would need to up my bid in order to be shown higher. The real problem though is that if we're talking specifically about my business, if I want to show on something like Web Form Software, the competition is much higher in this keyword, so I would have to pay a heck of a lot more just to show up on the page. In fact, $2.72 worth of a lot more. And if I do that, if I bid $2.72, now the economics of what my product is start to come into question. And this is where I wanted to circle back now to the original analysis of my website. In other words, you can't do this stuff in a vacuum. Everything is related. And by that I mean, if we look at our original Google Analytics content here, you can see that I had 3 what appear to be organic searches onto my store page. In other words, somebody came onto my website, they're looking for what I did, they hit the store page, and I had no sales yesterday. So 3 visits from organic search, and by the way, another 3 maybe from direct search. Again, we don't know what those mean, but at least 6 visits to my store page and no sales. So that is a really low percentage of conversions right there. In fact, it's a 0% conversion. So one of the first things that needs to happen is, as I mentioned before, none of this has anything to do with advertising because I didn't get any clicks yesterday anyway, right? So I had no clicks yesterday. So even if I'm not advertising, I'm still not doing great, right? Like people are going onto my site and they're just not buying the software. So that needs to be addressed first, right? I need to start getting a sale a day simply with the 6 or 7 users that I'm getting, as opposed to any users that I get from advertising. And the reason why is, of course, just plain old arithmetic. If we think about it, if I'm advertising at around $3 a click, as I mentioned in the first video, I used to have to get about 100 users onto my website a day in order to get 2 or 3 sales per day, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more. And so if you think about it then, if I have to pay $300 just to get 1 sale, the economics are simply not there to support the business. And so the first thing that I should be working on is lowering this gap right here. I need to make it so that if I get 10 users, I get 1 sale, and reliably so too. Not like I got lucky, I mean reliably. And so basically, what I'm going to do moving forward here is I'm going to leave my Google AdWords as it is. Because here's a simple fact. Even if I start bidding more and I get, 10 clicks a day or 30 clicks a day or whatever it is, and start basically making myself broke, more broke than I would like to be, I'm still not going to get sales, right? I should be getting sales from this right here. And so let's work on that first before we start throwing good money after bad, because that's all that's going to happen. I am plenty willing to pay $2, $3 per click, but only if that actually gives me users. As of right now, that's not getting me anything. And so that's a problem. So in the next video, we're going to continue to check in on our Google AdWords. We'll see what this does, but we're not going to work on it further until we make the site better, right? So we're actually going to talk about that process. That said, though, I do want to make one real quick change. And I think that if you're doing this, bid to a comfortable level, and even if you're not getting clicks, at least start gathering data. From my understanding, Google will actually do a better job serving ads and serving appropriate ads the more data you have, which makes sense. So I'm going to leave this running. I'm not going to turn this off. But the one thing I do want to change is at first I was really careful about the hours that I advertised on. And that basically came from when I went to my audience tab here in Google Analytics and I looked at the time of day that people were visiting my site. Now, historically, I find that that's usually between the hours of noon and 2, or slight variations thereof. But what's nice about Google Analytics is we can actually check that without having to guess. I can just say, well, starting from the month of November to today, when do the majority of my users visit the site? And you can see here that I actually don't know how to do that in terms of time of day looking at a month like this. But you can see here that if I do a specific day, if I just look at say the 26th, then I actually will get this nice chart that shows when people visited the site. And unfortunately, it's a little bit difficult here because the data is inconclusive, but generally speaking, again, I find that most of it's between noon and 2. However, if I look at yesterday's values, I can see here that there is clearly a majority of users coming on during business hours. So right now, I actually had my campaign set up to only show between noon and 2. Let's actually change this by going into settings here, selecting my starter campaign, and let's change our time of day. So under ad scheduling, I'm going to edit this. So it is, there's actually an easier way of doing this. Okay, so I'm actually going to change this from 10 till 5. So we're going to show our ads for a longer period of time. Now, obviously, the bid values and the advertising rates per day that I have are so low that this would very quickly get exhausted. So be careful about making changes like this. In other words, you could blow your advertising budget in the first hour of the day and not even get to 10 to 5. But because my ads aren't going to be clicked on anyway, I will happily at least show them so that I can get a better idea in my reporting tools right here to see what some of the bids are at different times of the day. Because this actually changes. These numbers change throughout the day. So my scheduling, I think, is something you should absolutely do. Always target for a country and always target for a specific time of day. There's no point to be advertising in the middle of the night if you're a business-related software product and you're not awake at that point anyway to do customer service or anything. There's no point in advertising, but there's also no point in limiting yourself too much. So I think when I started this campaign, I was a little bit too narrow. We're going to expand that out a little bit and see if that starts to make a difference. So in conclusion then today, I apologize I went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but as you can see here, I know a lot about my site. I know a lot about the types of data that I want to pick out. So knowing when people visit my site, knowing what pages they visit by doing the content drill down, get comfortable with all of this stuff. Figure out where people are going on your site. Figure out, are they visiting your store page? Are they buying if they are? Figure out all that stuff. And then like me, hopefully you'll get to a point where you can say, here is where the core problem lies. My core problem is people visit the store page, they spend about a minute on there, but they don't end up buying. What do I need to do to fix that first, right? Get to that point with yourself as well. And then we'll meet up here, next time, and we're going to start talking about what I can do specifically to fix that. And by the way, if you have any ideas about things that I can do to fix this store page, please let me know. Drop a line in the comments here, and we will figure this thing out together. All right, thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.